Welcome to another super duper exciting episode of the Lunduke Hour starring me, Brian Lunduke. Hi, everybody. It's just me in the studio today. No guests, no anything crazy like that. And what we're doing today is reviewing the Oryx Pro Laptop from System 76. Let me show you this guy. This is the laptop, big old beast of a laptop. I'm going to review this today. Now, that said, I want to address something before we get into the review. This show is sponsored in part by System 76, the folks who make this laptop. It's also sponsored by PogoLinux.com and, of course, my Patreon supporters. So there is almost certainly going to be among some people who watch me review this laptop a sense of perhaps a potential conflict of interest. If the sponsor for this show provides me a laptop and I give you a detailed review of it, I'm sure at least somewhere in the back of your mind you're going, hey, now wait a minute. Brian's probably a little bit biased towards this laptop, right? You know, at least just a little bit, because it's a sponsor of the show, right? And I thought about this long and hard. You'll notice I hadn't done reviews of the laptops that System 76 has been sending me. I show them to you guys. I show them what they look like. I kind of tell you what I feel about them. But I've stayed away from doing a full review because I didn't want everyone feeling like I was going to come in and be really biased and give you some sort of a false review. So, but I thought really, if I tell you that this laptop is glorious, and I really do like it, but if I come in and I tell you it's glorious and I lie about something about it, if I don't tell you like it really is, and then some of you go out and buy the laptop based on my review, and you find out that I was just full of garbage and I was just blowing smoke, then I'm never going to hear the end of it. The reality is it's going to kill my reputation. So I thought, I'm just going to give an honest review. I'm going to put this laptop down. I'm going to test it out. I'm going to install different distros on it. I'm going to do some gaming on it, some video production on it, and I'm going to really see what it's like. So that's what I'm going to tell you today, is exactly what I feel about it, and with the full knowledge that all of you can spot check me on this. Any of you who have this laptop can speak up about your own personal viewpoints on it. And realistically, if anyone thinks that I was just full of garbage on it, you guys can call me out on it. I'm going to be totally honest with you about what I feel about it, the good and the bad. But this is the Oryx Pro from System 76. This show is also sponsored by the awesome dudes over at PogoLinux.com, and those guys are fantastic. They didn't send me a piece of hardware to review. However, they do some pretty phenomenal hardware builds. You can go to their website at PogoLinux.com. You can do custom server builds, custom storage array builds, and desktop builds. Really, really great guys, focused on Linux-powered hardware. You can even choose which version of Linux you want pre-installed on your machine, and that's really rad. PogoLinux.com, good dudes, help make all of this show possible. So, thank you, gentlemen. All right, now let's just go ahead and dive on into this. Let's head first. What is the Oryx Pro? To start with, it is a fairly beefy machine. Let me pull this up here. Go ahead and look at it right there. It is not super thin. It's not the thickest laptop in the world. I don't know if I have the thickness right in front of me, but it's about a thumb width. The base is about a thumb width thick, and it's a nice heavy machine. This is not a light laptop. It's not a take it to a conference laptop. This is, I guess you could throw it in a backpack, but come on, it's going to be really heavy in that backpack. Oh, thud. You drop it down like a big ton of bricks. That said, there is a ton of power in here, even considering the relative heft to it. Now this one, let me see if I've got these details right. This is a 3.8 gigahertz i7, 8 cores, very, very beefy, 16 gigs of RAM. It has an M.2 drive in it for an SSD, Intel wireless, and an NVIDIA GTX 1070 with 8 gigs of video RAM. This is a really beefy machine. Oh, and a big old high DPI display. This is no little 1080p display. This is the full-on 4K. Is it full 4K? I think it's full 4K. I have to double check on that, but I believe it's a full 4K. The resolutions, I always have a difficult time with it because once you get above 1080p, It's like counting money. When you start imagining money and you're just an average guy making an average living, you think, whoa, $1,000, that's a lot of money. $100,000, that's a bunch of money. $1,000,000, oh my gosh, that's so much money. But everything after a million, you count like 1 million, 2 million, I don't know, many million. After that, it just kind of becomes this nebulous fluff number. And that's how I feel about resolutions of screens. This is, I believe, roughly a 4K display. I played a bunch of games at 1080p resolution in windowed mode, and it takes about a quarter of the screen, which is really pretty cool. And because it's got that NVIDIA 1070 in it, it's pretty beefy. Before we go any further, though, let's keep looking at the outside of this guy. All right, I'm going to close this up real quick. All right, so we've got ports. Let's start on the back, actually. So the back has a display adapter port, one of those little mini display ports, full-size HDMI, and the power cable. We'll get to the power cable momentarily. And then over here, it has the other display port, 2 USB Class C ports, 2 USB 3.0 ports, and then you flip it over to the other side. You got Ethernet, another USB 3, an SD card port, a SIM slot, which I don't even know if that one does anything, so I haven't tested that out, and then audio jacks over here on the side. It's got a lot of ports. Oh, and it's got the keyboard lock, because, you know, they've always got the keyboard lock. Interestingly, I don't think I've used a keyboard lock on a laptop in like a decade, but I think that might be more just how I use laptops. I don't really lock them anywhere. I guess if I was working at a computer company or like in an office or something, I might want to lock this up, especially a laptop that's big like this guy, big and fancy. Now, if you pop it open, first thing you notice is that keyboard. That keyboard is colored, man. Here, let me see if I can push this here. So you can actually cycle through different colors, red, purple, green, yellow, kind of a light blue, a deep blue. I like the green myself, you know, it's just the way it is. And it's got no Windows key on it. Instead, it ships by default with a little Ubuntu logo over the super key, which is pretty slick, really. It really does feel good. The trackpad's nice. It's got actual physical mouse buttons on it, which is nice. I'm not a big fan of trackpads that you actually click the trackpad part itself. I like having discrete buttons. It's just something I like, and this one has that. It also has the 10 keypad, which I figure if you're going to have a big laptop, you want the 10 key numerical pad. It just because it's good for games, it's good for entering numbers, and I just like having it around. The keyboard generally feels pretty good. Let me go ahead and log in here real quick. It feels pretty good. I mean, it's not a big mechanical keyboard, but the reality is it's actually a pretty good feeling laptop keyboard. It has good travel on it, feels pretty good. I mean, all things considered. It's got a nice kind of a soft touch to it, but yet it does have a little bit of an actual like click to it, which I feel like is important, at least for how I like to type. All right, so all of that stuff out of the way. Oh, the brick. I promised to show you the brick. This is the power brick, and it is beefy. It is a 19.5 volt power brick. Big old Herkin guy. So again, just like the machine itself, the power brick is not small. You're not going to use like a little wall wart for this guy. It's a full-on big beefy power brick. This is not a conference laptop. That's not what this is. This is a production laptop. This is a sort of laptop that you go out into the world and you do something with, right? You actually go out and you produce videos, you render 3D scenes, you code and you do some compiling. Compiling? That's the weirdest way to say that ever. Compiling. You can just say compiling, Brian. You don't have to say compiling. Compiling. You do some code compilation. Why is that a hard word for me to say today? I don't really know. But this is a really beefy machine for that sort of thing. So I ran it through its paces. I thought, what are a couple of good tests for this? And so obviously this comes from System 76, so it ships out of the gate with Ubuntu. So it comes preloaded with Ubuntu, which is not my favorite distribution in the world, but the reality is it works well enough. So I left it on there for most of my tests. First thing I wanted to test was simple gaming. So I installed a bunch of open source 3D shooters, Open Arena, and that sort of thing. And then I loaded on Steam and installed Civilization 5 and 6, because those are some of my favorite games, XCOM, and a few others. You know, not necessarily anything that's crazy demanding, but the reality is if you've ever played like the more recent Civilization games, if you max out the resolution and you max out all the settings, you can really grind that game to a slow halt. So I figured that's a pretty good test. So in this system, running at 1080p in a window, because I don't know, I just kind of wanted to do that. I wanted to do a streaming test. So I started with 1080p in a window, all the settings maxed out, all the texture qualities maxed out, all the shader details, everything as high as it can go. It never stuttered once. I'm not 100% certain what the frame rate was, but it was high. It was silky, silky smooth. And when you were doing that, the processor's really never kicked into full gear. It has 8 cores on there, and I never saw the 8 cores go above, I don't know, 30-40% usage. And that's with going through Open Broadcasting Studio to save it, what I was doing, to a file with some video overlays, including a video capture of myself. So this is where it started to get kind of interesting. I thought, how well does this Oryx laptop work for a solution if you were going to do 1080p gaming and do live game streaming where you also save the video to your local drive and grab a 1080p video from a video camera, composite it into that scene, and save that as well? How well does that go? Again, it definitely never broke 50% across the 8 cores. It barely broke a sweat. I mean, that's pretty impressive. If you compare that to, say, other i7 laptops that don't have a dedicated NVIDIA GTX 1070 or comparable card in it, the performance is nowhere near as good. I mean, this just blows those sorts of laptops out of the water. It just totally smokes them. The total performance difference that having that GTX card in here makes is absolutely, unbelievable. It really is a night and day difference. I have a couple of laptops around here. I've got a Sony over there and a Dell down there, and they're all good laptops. I mean, they really are. They're not bad laptops, but they don't have that dedicated high-end NVIDIA card in them. And you can play games pretty okay, but if you're also trying to stream and composite and render the video file that you're trying to stream down to your drive all at the same time, oh man, things get herky-jerky in a hurry. And it is really noticeable. Not on this guy. It really, really keeps up with it. And it was a really nice experience. And honestly, one of the things that I really enjoyed about this was having the 4K display meant I could up in one corner, I could have the game playing, Civilization 6 or whatever, right? And then at full 1080p. And then off on the other side, I could have the Open Broadcasting Studio running, also taking up a quarter of the screen, showing me all the composited screen that I'm saving out, with the window capture from the game and my video camera and everything else. And then down below it, I could have some chat rooms open and a web browser going. And then down the bottom, I just had a HTOP and a terminal running just so I could see what was going on. And there was plenty of screen real estate for all of that. And that's really handy. It made me realize that having a, not necessarily 4K screen, but a close to 4K screen, something that's significantly larger than 1080p, is incredibly handy for this sort of application, for live game streaming and the like. It's just so convenient. And that kind of applies to the production of this show as well. The same the same bottlenecks really are with me if I'm doing, say, a video chat with someone else and I need to composite a bunch of video chats together. Having that nice NVIDIA graphics card really makes a big difference. Now, if you're going NVIDIA graphics card, you can use the open source Nouveau drivers, but you're not getting the massive performance. So if you want the massive performance, you are going to be using the binary NVIDIA drivers. That's a negative. That is a negative. There's no way to cut it. But the performance that you get out of it really is noteworthy. And the rest of the machine is completely open source and free software. I mean, if the only real binary driver that I'm dealing with here is for the GPU, I can handle that. Like it's difficult because I want to be raw free software only, but really, man, for the performance gains I'm getting to make game playing, video streaming, and all the things that I do so much more performant, it's kind of worthwhile on this. Yeah, I gotta say it's a negative that it has to use a proprietary GPU driver in order to achieve those levels of performance, but it's not enough of a negative to get me to not use it, if that makes any sense. Now, once I did that, once I got it going with Open Broadcasting Studio and a game rocking out with everything maxed out, the fans kicked in, no doubt about it. It's a pretty quiet machine. If you're really quiet, let me see if I can actually pull this close to the microphone so you can hear it. Okay, I'm putting it right into the microphone right now. You might be able to tell there's a barely perceptible hum, and that is the fans going, and it's very, very light. They're very slow right now, and I found that through most usage, web browsing, word processing, even some code compiling and whatnot, those fans really don't kick in. It's only when you hop over to the gaming side of things that those fans kick in, and they are not crazy loud. I used to have way back in my Macintosh days, which was over a decade ago, I had one of those G5 towers, and they called them the wind turbine, the cheese grater front all metal G5 towers. And man, when those things got going, I swear to God, they sounded like a jet engine. It was so crazy loud. It was ridiculous. This is not that. This is not crazy loud. And having it on your desk, if you have no other sound in the room, then the predominant thing you're going to hear is the fans on this. If you have your headphones on, they're not loud enough to overtake your headphones. If you put this underneath your desk, you're not really going to hear the fans. If you put it on the other side of your desk, like a little bit away from you, you'll hear the fans a little bit, but not too much. So they are there. It's not a whisper quiet machine. It's not a silent machine, but it is a crazy beefy machine. So I would say that if you're a gamer looking at this machine, it's probably not a big deal because you're already used to having a machine that has a high-end GTX or comparable video card with a fan on it. You're used to having a fan going. For those of you who are coming at this from the point of view of like a silent ultrabook style thing, this is not that. This is not a silent machine. It's not loud, but it's not silent. So that's something to bear in mind. Battery life, I got a couple hours. It's really hard to say exactly what average use would be because I was doing some demanding stuff on here with video, playing games and recording to OBS. I got less than 3 hours of battery life. But that said, that's close to 3 hours of battery life playing full 1080p games using a high-end GPU, streaming that data off to a streaming service while recording a 1080p resolution video clip down back to the same drive. I mean, that's doing a ton of work. My guess is that if you're doing more conventional stuff, maybe with the brightness turned down and doing some word processing or browsing, it's probably going to get better battery life than that. But for me, I was looking at this machine from the point of view of how far can I take it? Can this machine do everything I want to do and just crunch through it like a hot knife through butter? crunch through it like a hot knife through butter. It's a very, very weird metaphor I mixed together there, but you kind of get my point. It did a ton. So it's not the kind of machine you throw in your backpack. You aren't going to lug this to a convention and walk around with it all day. You're going to eventually need to find an outlet to charge your battery. It is going to be a little bit on the heavy side. When you do pull it out, it's going to turn heads because it's a very attractive machine. It does look nice. It's got the nice System 76 logo on the back, which means that you're not going to have people making fun of you at a Linux conference because you've got a big glowing apple or something back there. It overall looks quite nice. The colored keyboard is great, and I do love that it's all changeable. By the way, the colors on it are all in hardware. There's you don't change it via the software, so there's not like drivers where you're reliant on one particular OS and a control panel to change the colors. It's all via the function keys here, which is really cool. I also went ahead and did some video editing on here. So I recorded some video clips using my traditional camera and brought in some 1080p clips down into this and edited it. And oh man, it is so much faster than the current machine I'm using. Now, currently I'm using an i7. It is I want to say a 2.8 i7. I do not have a dedicated NVIDIA GPU in that machine. It's got an Intel GPU, a kind of a mid-range Intel GPU. It's okay. Obviously, it's just the open source drivers that I'm using with that. The speed difference between that machine, which is still, is it the current generation i7 or the one before? It might be the one before. And it's not the KB Lake, but the one right before the KB Lakes. But anyway, the speed difference was astronomical. This machine, the Oryx Pro here, it chunked through a fairly simple project. It wasn't complex. It was 1080p video, a couple of titles, some overlaid clips, a couple of edit points, a few fades and fade-ins and some transitions. Very, very simple project. It was about 35 minutes long, and it rendered it in 6 minutes. Something like that, 6.5 minutes, thereabouts, out to a full 1080p file. It was so fast. It was so glorious. And the old machine I'm using from editing now records in renders those same projects in slightly worse than real time. So a 35-minute project will take, between 30 and 40 minutes to render. So the difference here was absolutely night and day. And I think a lot of that is due to the GPU. Having that dedicated NVIDIA card in here really makes a big difference. It makes it so much more is possible. I'm not sure how I feel about that. Because looking at this machine, it's pretty, its keyboard is lovely, it's beautiful, but it's not the kind of laptop you carry around with you. Not everywhere anyway. You're not going to go to a conference with it, but as a production machine, this is my machine. This is my mobile audio, video, 3D gaming powerhouse workstation plus, where you go and you plop it down with some of your other equipment and get to work. It's kind of amazing. Realistically, you could go to one of those big gaming events, put this down, get some games rocking on this, plus a bunch of video capture coming in, and you could live stream your 1080p stream of gaming at the same time as enjoying your game, and you're not going to experience any sort of difficulty there. The amount of horsepower in here is very high-end desktop-like. Now the machine, let me bring this up here because I want to make sure I get the price right here. The machine starts at $1,399, so about $1,400, and that comes with two different possible screen options here. I'm just gonna make sure I got this right for you guys because this is very, very critical. The one I have here. here we are. Boom, boom, boom. Here we go. So you can do it either a 15.6 inch or a 17.3 inch. And the 15.6 inch, and either of those can be in a 1080p resolution, or you can get the 15.6 inch in a 4K high DPI. And adding the 4K high DPI into it adds in an extra $149 to the total price. You can get this in 3 different GPU models, a GTX 1060 with either 3 or 6 gigs of RAM, or the GTX 1070, which has 2048 CUDA cores with 8 gigs of RAM. Pretty nice and beefy. The one I've got here is a 3.8 gigahertz i7. You can also do a 3.9 gigahertz i7, and it'll go all the way up to 64 gigs of RAM. Good God. I've got 16 gigs in here right now, and it runs so beautifully. And even when I'm doing the gaming and the recording and the streaming and the video editing, it never uses up all that RAM. However, this would make a killer machine to have a bunch of virtual machines on. So having a bunch of RAM might be nice. But it goes all the way up to 64 gigs. The drive I've got in here is the 250 gig M.2 SSD, which is pretty fast. However, that got me looking around, and they also offer the half a terabyte and full terabyte PCIe M.2 SSDs, the NVMe drives that have crazy high read and write speeds. Those add, quite a few $100 to the price, but I'm very curious what the total speed you'd see out of those are, because in theory, if you've got a read speed of 3,500 megabytes per second, that's a big bump over, say, a 540 megabyte per second read speed. So that's a pretty big deal. I mean, that's mega fast. You can set in an additional M.2 drive, so you can have 2 M.2 drives in here, and then you can also have 2 2.5 inch drives. So no joking, I think you can fit in 4, 8, about 10 terabytes of storage in this. Is that right? That can't be right. Holy God in heaven, that's big. I think that is right. I think you can fit in a crazy amount. Anyway, if you go to system76.com, they have a thing where you can configure it. And I'm pretty confident you'd end up spending a lot if you put in 10 terabytes of SSDs into this bad mamma jamma. But the fact that you can do that on a machine that's this powerful is really, really kind of friggin' awesome. I kind of want that. Now, the more I'm thinking about it, the more I kind of want that. I really do like this machine. So the question is, would I recommend this machine to someone else? If you are a video creator or a avid video gamer and you're looking for a laptop that is going to meet those needs, yes, absolutely. Like for a comparison, I'm a really big fan of the Lunduke Pro Laptop from System76. You guys saw me talk about it a few times. It's a very thin laptop, very sleek, but it's not the kind of laptop that is going to blow away the game benchmarks, right? It's going to perform well. It's going to travel nicely. It's going to look great at conferences. It's going to be a perfectly very powerful machine to bring with you everywhere. But this machine, because of that dedicated 1070 GPU in there, man, the difference that makes for hardcore gaming and creative purposes just really can't be overstated. It really is quite nice. I do recommend that. So if you're a hardcore gamer, you do game streaming, you do video editing, or you do any sort of 3D rendering work, if you do a lot of work in Blender and the like, yes, this is totally a machine for you. Absolutely. In fact, I really like this machine. I kind of want this machine just because of that. It is so powerful. I love that we are in a day and age when there is machinery like this shipping with Linux by default. Oh, and that reminds me. Other distributions. I tried out Elementary OS, OpenSUSE Tumbleweed, and the current release of Fedora. The current release of Fedora gave me a couple of problems. I think it was a Fedora issue. I don't think it was the laptop issue, because OpenSUSE, Tumbleweed, and Elementary both worked very, very well. Had no real problems getting everything functioning with those distributions on this laptop. The Fedora install gave me some headaches. Just all over the place. So it might have been just a corrupt ISO or something. I'm not really sure what was going on there, but my guess is under normal circumstances, Fedora probably would work well on it. I'm not 100% sure what was happening there, but both OpenSUSE and Elementary worked great. No issues. I did want to get around to installing just a vanilla Debian install and maybe doing an Arch install. I haven't gotten around to doing those yet. But luckily, I've got this machine for a couple more days, so I'm going to give it some more tests. I'm going to throw a few more distros on there and really see what I can do with it. In fact, I'm going to edit all of my video for this week. All the shows are going to be edited on here, just to really let me live in it. And come the end of the week, I'll let you guys know how it went. I'll let you know if I'm still liking it as much as I am. But honestly, I think the specification for this machine, after you really deck it out, it probably hovers right around the 2000 mark, somewhere around there. If you go to system76.com and do the configuration options, you'll probably kind of figure that out. But it's around the 2000 mark, maybe just a little lower. And I feel like for that price, I could have a machine that does everything I need for the video production for this show, that does everything I need for my gaming. What little coding I do, it certainly could handle. And there's really nothing that it can't take that I can throw at it. Nothing at all. And in fact, I am somewhat enamored at the sheer number of ports on this guy. So the two USB-Cs, that's great. I don't have many things that use USB-C, but having two is nice. And then 1, 2, 3 USB 3 standard ports. That's fantastic. And a couple of video outs. It's just really nice. So I could easily see having 1 or 2 external monitors. It is not a light machine. 1 or 2 external monitors that you plug into this bad boy, and for when you're at your desk, and then when you're on the go, just living with the 4K display. But then again, I don't know that I need anything beyond the 4K display. Because like I said, once you've got enough screen real estate for your game and your streaming system and your video editor and a web browser up, you're kind of tapped out. I mean, what more can you want to be displaying? It's a really great machine. So I guess that's kind of where I'm at with this guy. There are some downsides. The fans do kick in. They are not quiet. The battery life is not phenomenal, but that's not really what you buy this machine for. This machine isn't built to go into the Amazon and last for 27 days off a single charge. That's not this machine. And the fact that it uses an NVIDIA card means you're going to be using a binary driver. At least you're likely going to want to be using a binary, one of the closed source drivers. That can be a negative for some people. So if that's really important to you, I suggest staying away from the Oryx. But if you want really high performance, if you want your games to really rock out, then this is a great laptop. I mean, this is a great gaming laptop. I would put this up there on par or beyond what a lot of the gaming laptops are that you'll find somewhere. Various companies sell gaming laptops that are targeted towards gamers, and this one, honestly, smoke most of them. The fact that you can put 4 drives in here. Max has had a 64 gigs of RAM. I've never had a machine with 64 gigs of RAM. I never have. 16 gigs is at a point now where it feels like that's a lot, but it's not like too much. You know what I mean? And then if I think ahead to 32 gigs, wow. 32 gigs. I don't even know what I'd use that for. 32 gigs. 64 gigs? What on earth? I mean, immediately my mind thinks virtual machines. I'll have 4 virtual machines running at all times, and each one gets 16 gigs of RAM. Like, there comes a point where it's just like, okay, I don't need that much. But 16 gigs in here. I definitely, my personal recommendation, if you do opt to go for the Oryx, I would spend the extra couple of bucks and upgrade the GPU from the baseline 3 GB NVIDIA GTX option that it has, and bump it up to the 1070 with the 8 gigs of RAM. To me, that's going to be where your biggest bang for your buck is going to be in just maximizing the performance, because it really does make such a huge difference on this. You can always upgrade your RAM later, right? I mean, at least I think so. Yeah, and you can always put more hard drives in it later. You always can. I mean, the M.2 drives are a little different, I think, but like there's traditional laptop size hard drive bays in there, so you can always upgrade those later. But the NVIDIA card, max that sucker out. Go for the higher end CPU. Max out the i7, max out the GPU, and then however much RAM you have is however much RAM you have. 8 gigs, 16 gigs, whatever. But at that point, you've got a killer gaming machine. And I personally would probably opt for the 4K display. That's the way I'd go. I'd go with the 4K display. Again, it's a little bit of a bump up in price. I think, I can't remember how much it is, 150 bucks. Maybe I'm wrong about that. I should probably check things before I just randomly spew it off on memory alone. Yeah, okay. So if you want to get, so it's an extra 350 bucks to go from the 3 gig 1060 GPU to the 8 gig 1070 GPU. That seems worth it to me. And then upgrading from the 15.6-inch 1080p display to the 4K display is 149 bucks. Again, that seems worthwhile to me. Now, the jump in the CPU speed isn't as huge. The model I've got here is the 3.8 gigahertz one. The 3.9 gigahertz one is an extra $139. I can't personally vouch for what the performance bump there is, but if I were buying this right now, I'd probably pull the trigger and go with the 3.9. And then as for the RAM, jumping from 8 gigs to 16 gigs shipped directly from them is an extra 99 bucks. That seems like a reasonable price. It's an extra 549 bucks if you want to go up to 64 gigs. It is 4 slots, so there's 4 RAM slots in here, and that would be with 4 16 gig RAM sticks. So that seems pretty worthwhile to me. And then drive space is based on whatever you need, of course. So anyway, so there you have it. That's kind of the full end-all, be-all of this bad boy. I like the screen. The screen looks good. It's a very attractive screen. The keyboard is nice. It feels pretty good. I don't know that I would play video games with this. Here, let me show you the bottom of it. With shorts on, with the laptop on your lap, for the bare reason that there's a lot of vents in the bottom and there are fans. And my guess is that you probably will singe a couple of leg hairs down there. Though that's generally a problem with any of these laptops, these sorts of laptops. That's just going to happen. So this is the kind of laptop that isn't really a laptop. It's a notebook. It's a portable GPU powerhouse workstation that folds up nicely in a clamshell case. If you want to call that a laptop, you can. But personally, I would put this more on a desk. I wouldn't put this on your lap so much. At least not for any extended periods of time if you would like to treat your leg hair with respect. I do like this machine. I give it a thumbs up. It's really hard for me to give it a star rating or anything like that, but I give this machine a solid thumbs up. From my point of view, I could use this running nothing but Linux to do all of my video production, to do all game streaming and hardcore gaming on it. There's really nothing I can't do with this laptop. So there you have it. The Oryx Pro System 76, very, very cool machine. And you know what? Take that as you will. I think it's pretty rad. I'm going to do all the production of the show this week on it, and I think it'll make my life a lot easier. I'm going to throw a couple other distros on it. If there's any tests you would like to see me do with this machine, let me know. Add them into the YouTube comments here, or just kind of tweet them at me, just to let me know. I'm at Brian Lunduke, and that would help tremendously. All right, now the rest of this week on the Lunduke Hour is kind of fun. So tomorrow, I believe it's tomorrow, I'm going to be doing a roundup of what I've been working on here in the labs, 3D printing some parts, a little hit and miss there in terms of success, but I'll show you guys what I'm working on so far and some of the projects and some of the let's just say the forward progress that has been made. It's two steps forward, one step back, but overall I'm a good step, maybe even a step and a half forward. So I'm feeling pretty good about that. So we'll be talking about that tomorrow. And then there's Linux Thursday, and there's something else happening on Wednesday, and I've already forgotten what it is. I bet it's awesome too. I'm sitting here right now and I don't even remember what I'm doing on Wednesday. It's really hard to think ahead more than 24 hours, you know? Anyway, I wanted to do a quick thanks to everyone, all of my supporters over on Patreon. You guys and gals are amazing. I really, really appreciate all of your support in getting this show put together. And everyone who offers their questions and their feedback over on Twitter and Mastodon and everywhere else, thank you. It's making the show a lot better. And I really appreciate it. I really do. It means an absolute ton to me. And that's all I got. That's it.